Hello, my name is Craig Seibert, and this short web seminar is titled The 8 Components of Civic Excellence, and this particular version is designed for pastors and Christian leaders. And before I get into the 8 components, I want to speak to you about Dr. John Witherspoon, because as we get into the 8 components, it may seem like, gosh, there's a lot to be learned here, and it's some unmined gold, I mean to tell you. But let's talk about Dr. John Witherspoon, who was the president of Princeton University and one of the founding fathers and signer of the Declaration of Independence during 1770s and 1780s. Dr. John Witherspoon was a pastor and Christian leader in England. He's requested to come to be president of Princeton University, and he's been called the educator of the founding fathers. His patriotic sentiments and sound judgment were so profound that in early 1776 he assisted in writing the Constitution for New Jersey. This is before the federal Constitution was even dreamed of. In June 1776 he was elected as a delegate to the Continental Congress, and in July and August of 1776 he debated and signed the Declaration of Independence. This was said about him, as he was a member from 1776 to 1782. Members of Congress were so amazed at his wisdom and breadth of knowledge that he was placed on the most important military and financial committees as well as other commissions requiring deft handling. And so what I wanted to bring up is here you've got a pastor, reverend, doctor, theological thinker that also was an intellectual giant in other areas of wisdom and breadth of knowledge. And I would like to commend to you the possibility that as a pastor and Christian leader, you might also follow in John Witherspoon's footsteps. And as I explore the 8 components of civic excellence, hopefully we'll get a vision for doing that. Well, I referred to the definition of civics in a short web seminar that defined the difference between civics and politics, but I want to revisit that here. Civics is the study of rights, that is, where they come from and who grants them. Duties, that is, the nature of truth and responsibilities. Citizenship, that is, the history, values, goals, accomplishments, inspirations, and challenges that are overcome by a people. Government, that is, civil government, with attention to the role of citizens. That is, the citizen's role in the area of self-government, family government, and free associations. And then finally, the aspect of citizens relating as members of a society, that is, the societal structures that I've been speaking about in these web seminars, and to civil affairs. And so if you break down the definition of civics, or excuse me, if you expand them, you really see some detailed components that would make up the components of excellence in civics training. And so what I've done is put this into a graphical structure for your consideration. And this graphical structure outlines the 8 components of civic excellence that provide maximum liberty and the most healthy of societies. The first component is that of worldviews. What is the worldview in terms of the nature of man, the nature of society, and the nature of God? And as a worldview, which there are many, addresses those 3 questions, different ideas on government and societal structure will come forth. And as a pastor and Christian leader, obviously from a biblical worldview, we'd want to answer those questions well: the nature of man, nature of society, and nature of God. From that, we derive moral precepts and values. And those moral precepts and values can actually be poured in and imbued into the philosophy and structures of government, which we'll speak about in a second. Thirdly, there's a need for an understanding of history. When you take worldviews and then add in the moral precepts and values that come out of that, then to see those things lived out in the timeline of history is quite informative as far as civic excellence goes. And in the U.S., we have some profound gemstones of history to explore as people of faith and courage lived out their faith as they tried to really produce an American experiment that would maximize freedom and liberty. Well, as all that's lived out over time, a purpose of civil government can be derived at. And that's one of the key questions that we need to be asking people today, and it's a very informative one, and not many people have a thought-out answer, and that is, what is the purpose of civil government? If that question can be answered well and clearly, then we can make a lot of headway quickly if we can have some common agreement on that. And our founding fathers in the United States actually answered that. Then, men and women of character need to be placed in office to serve in the civil realm, and they need to view themselves as both servants of God and servants to the people. And then finally, there needs to be a well thought out governing structure. If you have those 6 components, you'll have maximum liberty and a healthy society. But wait, I say that there's 8 components at the top. Well, these 6 components produce a flow that allow for maximum liberty and a healthy society, but there's 2 other components that have to be considered. The 7th component is this: there has to be citizens who are wise, moral, self-governing, and willing to guard their and others' liberty. And then lastly, there has to be an awareness of other worldviews and systems of belief that usurp liberty. And so in total, those 8 things make up the 8 components of civic excellence. Well, as you look at those 8 things, what does that exactly mean, and where can this uscivicstraining.org site really help you out? Well, here's what this means, just to flesh it out a little further. You know, there are some Christian pastors who were giants from both the Reformation to the Pilgrim era to the Founding era that really created the worldview and the philosophy, didn't create it, but taught it in such a way that it was embraced by all of society. And so there's some spiritual giants whose shoes that we follow in, that we need to be stewards of what they've given us. The moral precepts and values come straight from the Scriptures, and as you explore U.S. history and understand it well, it's just replete with examples of how the Bible informed all of life in our founding documents. There's an understanding of history as it pertains to not just the 13 colonies, but as a pastor or Christian leader, you know how God has worked through history in the Old Testament. We know how God's worked through history in the New Testament, and the book of Acts is a book in the Bible that certainly reveals a lot of that. We need to quit pretending that all of a sudden God stopped working in history with the closing of the Old and New Testaments. God soldiers on in His creation, working in time and space and history, and American history is just replete with God's providential action and activity. And so understanding early U.S. American history and seeing God's activity in it is so important. The Declaration of Independence is our articulation of the philosophy of government. And there's over 20 biblical principles that are embedded in that document. There's men and women of character that helped form the creation of this thought and this structure of government, and then there's been men and women of character that have been called forth since to fulfill their roles in government. There's the U.S. Constitution that provides a structure for our society. But it's more than just the U.S. Constitution at a federal level. It's the national Constitution working in conjunction with state constitutions, working in conjunction with local governments, working in conjunction with self-governing people in society. And so this whole constitutional structure, when fully understood, really helps a pastor or Christian leader to understand the full breadth of what a healthy society looks like. And then, using examples of Paul Revere and the men of Lexington, there were Christian citizens that were willing to guard their liberty and the liberty of others. And then lastly, in this modern age, we need to be aware of other systems of belief that have designs on usurping liberty and growing other systems of control outside the design that founding fathers came up with, that was based on biblical principles and maximized freedom and liberty for the individual. And so the question is, are you up for the challenge? That's the purpose of the uscivicstraining.org site. It's been created to help you, that you and others might become the John Witherspoons of this age. Would you consider going in this direction, wading into this area, and becoming a leader to that end? My name's Craig Seibert. Thanks for listening.